Hello everyone, this is Bobo the Vulture. Thanks for coming out to the rollout of this exciting new Let's Play series. Well, hopefully you'll find it exciting. But what is it, right? I know, it's a mystery. Anyways. The history of racing games, man. It can you can trace it all the way back to the early to mid 1970s, but probably the first racing game that people will be able to remember now when you go back is Pole Position. Pole Position was an arcade game that was put out by Namco. They had a big hit on their hands with it, actually. It wasn't exactly Pac-Man Fever, but, I mean, they made a friggin' cartoon out of the thing. But, it basically looked something like this. I qualified to race. Gotta jockey for position around these guys. So for 1982, pretty impressive stuff. I mean, right? I mean, you can see why people would have been kind of big on it. So yes, they they made this fantastic cartoon, and of course they also had home versions for the new Atari 2600, sort of shortly after that came out, which was sort of the beginning of racing games on home console. Pole Position for the 2600. Of course, they had other great, pretty good, for the time, racing games on the 2600. Things like Night Driver and Duro. Although they tended to follow the same sort of pattern. Sort of evenly sized road that is like 3 widths of your car wide around. You can sort of get to, you have to sort of try and weave your way around these interference cars. You crash or explode or whatever it is if you collide with them. That sort of thing. And I mean, this general means of racing game continued on, with things like graphic improvements and that sort of thing. But later on, you had ones like Outrun. Outrun, I kind of have fond personal memories of. That was, I think, probably the first arcade game I really felt like I got hooked on. Like, it was I remember playing it at some kid's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and just wanting to get more quarters to play that thing. Because, I mean, you can see down there at the bottom it has pedals, it has a shifter, it's only high and low gear, but still, there's a little shifter over there, there's a steering wheel. You can feel like a real boss running that thing. Well, I mean, if you're a kid, this was probably when I was like, 7, 8 years old, maybe, playing that game. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. And of course the contemporaries then, at that point in time, of course, Outrun you could get for your Sega Master System if you had one of those, or later on for the Sega Genesis. I remember actually that was one of the things I think I was in, I remember trying to have these discussions with Mysterious JG, like, oh man, if we were going to get one of these video game console things, which one would we get? And I was always like, I want the Master System, because the Master System's got Outrun, which it did. Master System had Outrun, which was pretty cool, don't get me wrong, but the Nintendo had, yeah, Rad Racer like a champion. You want extra super cool realism? Well, you got glowing sand here because it's not a different color. Plus, oh my god, put on your 3D glasses. What is that popping sound I just heard? Is it everyone else's mind being blown? Alright. Yep. Rad Racer. So, that's the one we ended up going with. That footage there was actually recorded off of the cartridge copy of Rad Racer that I still have to this day. Never got rid of that. I think part of my thinking as a child both was that Outrun was a translation of a legit arcade machine, oh my gosh, and in Outrun you run a Ferrari Testarossa, whereas in Rad Racer you're only driving a Ferrari 328, which that's the difference between a V8 and a flat 12 engines. I mean, you know, this was like the Rad Racer Ferrari was like the baby Ferrari, and the Outrun Ferrari was like the big, expensive URA drug dealer one. But I mean, you even saw in that bit of video footage, basically, evenly 3 wide lane of road. The turns are all sort of long and gradual, and you don't really, I mean, you barely have to slow down when you get to a turn. You just have to be pointing in the right direction, and then just sort of like brake as your tires sort of start to make smoke or whatever, or, you know, little screechy noises. Then if you tap a car, you flip out, or, you know, go nuts or something like that. Not exactly a simulation of driving fast or anything like that. Of course, they were trying to do that on the PC side with games like Test Drive back in the 80s, and then later on toward the 1990s you had the Need for Speed series got started. Need for Speed's still sort of an ongoing venture. I guess they did a spin-off Need for Speed Shift game, which has since spun off into like Shift 2 and some other games like that. And they were definitely a different experience. They were good in a lot of ways, and that they, you know, for one, you had more than one car that you could pick from, and the cars had differences from one another. In Rad Racer, you could pick the F1 machine, which was basically a contemporary Williams F1 car, if I remember right. At least that's how it was meant to look, or the Ferrari 328. But they drove exactly the same. It was just a different graphics set, basically. In the PC games, the cars were designed to operate, you know, slightly differently, that sort of thing. And you had some early attempts in getting into 3D and polygon effects and that sort of thing. Like, things were supposed to be rendered all fancy like that. You started getting that in games in the early 90s, like race driving or stunt driving. Those were the sort of later Atari equivalents. Wait, that guy in the giant semi-truck just managed to make his way through this loop? Why is there oncoming traffic in this loop? How is this race driving? I guess this isn't race driving, this is just hard driving. I presume too much. But that's okay, I got a checkpoint! But yeah, you can sort of tell there, not exactly designed around the idea of, you know, true to life, how cars are driven. Giant loop-de-loops, that's, yeah, that sort of thing. Not exactly the way that I would imagine driving my car around. So you can imagine then, in, I guess it would have been 1998, early 1998, you know, Mysterious JG and I, we still had, well, I guess JG at that point in time was not around. He might have been elsewhere, but, or no, maybe he was. I forget. Whatever was going on, though, like, I was in high school. I was getting ready to graduate high school, actually. Um, but as far as, like, video games, like, I had a PC. I was probably doing things like occasionally playing Need for Speed. Can't remember if I had it then, but either way. Um, but as far as console gaming went, we still just had Super Nintendo. When a friend of mine, who actually now I believe is a gig musician up in Canada, but either way, he came to stay with us for like an overnight or two. And he brought his PlayStation with him, his PS1. And there was one game that he had that, he put in the system there, and I just remember seeing the introduction for this game, and like basically sort of you see all the like there's like all the little weird like names and things that sort of all flash up during the intro. I know that those don't make a lot of sense to most people, or they don't have any particular meaning, but if you're a kid who recently got his driver's license, had always fairly voraciously read car magazines growing up, watched races off and on, and later honestly got into, actually going to tracks and checking out the races themselves. Everything about it. And I mean, I guess, like it may be hard to get into that sort of a mindset, but imagine that, like, everything that you see in that video that doesn't make sense to you, imagine that makes perfect sense and no one has ever addressed before in a game. And it looked a little something like this. 15 years after having first seen that introduction movie, it still makes me a little misty to see it.